On the national finances, I just feel that neither party are levelling with the public about just how big the national debt's getting.
Well, the national debt, Nigel, is the thick end of 100% of GDP. What does that mean? It means that the debt that we have to pay back as a government, albeit through time, is equivalent to the size of the entire economy in a single year. In context, back in 2009, before the financial crisis, the national debt was about 30% of GDP.
Wow.
And before COVID, it was about 80% of GDP. It's now 100% of GDP. There's lots to talk about. The sort of big picture of this budget is that Rachel Reeves just increased spending by about £70 billion a year. She increased taxation by about 40-odd billion pounds a year, most of which she tried to blame on a Tory black hole. So that means borrowing more of £30 billion a year. These are very, very big numbers.
So what it means then is that the size of that national debt is going to get bigger.
The size of the national debt is going to get bigger, but also, and that's, as you borrow more each year, you add up all those borrowings, that is your stock, as we say, of national debt. And when you're borrowing an extra £30 billion a year over 5 years, you're borrowing an extra, well, I did the sums, she's borrowing an extra £142 billion a year over the next 5 years. The market has to absorb that. The government, of course, has to borrow off investors. It can't just conjure up money. Well, sometimes it can, but she's not saying that the Bank of England is going to do that. And my concern is that financial markets won't be able to withstand that. They'll charge the government more to borrow. That's already happening.
And it started today.
And that will push up mortgage rates and personal loans and loans that businesses take on, and that won't do anything to help growth. On the contrary.
Hey everyone, in the wake of the latest budget this week that happened on Wednesday, we are seeing some right-wing figures like Nigel Farage starting to harp on about the national debt, a tactic reminiscent of Republicans in the US during the Obama years. Obviously, it looks like Farage and Reform UK plan to make the national debt a key criticism against the new government in the coming years. First off, yes, the debt is substantial. Now it's around 100% of GDP, which could present issues in terms of economic stability and the rise in interest payments that inevitably impact public services. Farage might emphasise this problem in future debates, but will he suggest any practical solutions? It's likely that he'll focus on austerity without offering real answers. Now, regarding national finances, we've seen debt now grow dramatically. It was around 30% of GDP before the 2008 financial crisis, then it's rose to 80% just before the COVID-19 pandemic. Now it's at 100%. Rachel Reeves has just announced an increase in spending by roughly £27 billion per year and around £40 billion in new taxes, with borrowing projected to go up by £30 billion annually. This, of course, means that our national debt will keep on growing, and the debt increase could weigh on the economy. And as the government borrows more, it could lead to high interest rates for public borrowing. This might push up costs for personal loans, mortgages and businesses. Whilst Farage and the right might argue that the national debt is an imminent crisis, debt itself isn't inherently negative. It depends on what we're borrowing for. Borrowing to invest in the economy could lead to long-term growth and increased tax revenues, which would ultimately help reduce debt. However, if borrowing just funds short-term spending without boosting growth, then debt becomes a bigger burden. Farage and Reform UK may push the idea that the only answer is austerity and cutting public services. They've often mentioned the need to shrink government so that they may use the debt issue to advocate for austerity measures, which we've seen can have harmful impacts on the economy and people. In summary, the national debt is significant, but its impact depends on how widely we use borrowed funds. Unfortunately, the rhetoric from Farage and the right is likely to oversimplify, focusing on the debt as a crisis without discussing constructive ways to fix it. But let me know what you think in the comments. I've been Jake from Just Jake. As always, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. You actually made it to the end of the video. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, which, why haven't you already, is somewhere over there. And also, if you want to watch more videos, also check out over there. I've been Jake from Just Jake. See you later.